Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Uninvited Opinions. In this week's episode, we're going to be covering a lot of cricket action that's going on around the world. So, we're going to be talking about the England versus India T20 internationals. There's the Afghanistan versus Zimbabwe test matches, which concluded recently, and they've now gone on to the T20s. Then there was the Windies versus Sri Lanka T20s, ODIs, and the forthcoming test series. And the India versus South Africa women's ODIs, which concluded today in Lucknow, is it? Yeah. So a fair bit to get through. And before that, Nags, how are you doing?
Doing good. And obviously, all the cricket that you talked about is keeping us busy. There's a lot to follow. There's a lot to basically read from.
Brilliant. Let's dive into it right away then. So let's kick off with India versus England, the T20s. Interesting, very interestingly poised at this point in time. England leading the series 2-1. It's been a simple series so far. Win the toss, choose to bowl first, and you win the game. Your impression so far?
Yeah, it's probably England's forte right now. It's over the past few years, the white ball cricket has actually taken precedence over the red ball priorities. And all that rotation policy business that we talked about, they are obviously not hamstrung by any of those limitations in this T20 series. So they are pretty much full strength, and they are doing what they actually do best. But to be fair, on the other hand, India, it's a lot been said about that they are actually facing the problem of plenty. But I think the problem of plenty is kind of hurting them because they are still trying to figure out the best balance for the team. And we are actually not very far from the T20 World Cup, for which all of the teams are actually gearing up. So in that way, it does appear that you win the toss, you chase and you win. But then you still have to put a competitive total if you're batting first, if you're asked to bat first. And I think India is kind of struggling to get that act together.
Yeah, and I think India are lacking belligerence at the top of the order, both mainly batting, but also a bit on the bowling front if you look at sheer fast bowling firepower. And I think England have that belligerence both in their bowling unit and the batting unit. They've got the extreme pace of Jofra Archer and Mark Wood, who've been really impressive. And I think that's a trend which we've observed over the past 12, 18 months, where they look to attack with two extremely fast bowlers and a good suite of multi-skilled bowlers to complement them, and then the batting order is just lined with power hitters right through the order. So I think there could be the odd day when their batsmen don't come off and spectacularly implode, because they typically don't have people who can sort of play in an innings like say Kohli did the other day. But if you this, I think they're unmatched in terms of sheer power hitting. And I think you very rightly said it, that the issue has been that even if you are called in to bat first, you still need to do a decent job of putting in a total which sets a target to the opposition. And I think in the two games that India have lost, they've been nowhere near good enough in terms of putting together a total. And I think they've been pegged back by early wickets, some excellent sustained fast bowling into the body, not giving a lot of room, and the one game that India did win, they showed a different strategy by sending in Ishan Kishan to open, and in the third T20 they sort of regressed by pushing him back down the order. And I think that's probably been India's problem over the last 2-3 years, right? They've got really good quality batsmen, really good top order players in Rohit Sharma, Shikhar Dhawan, KL Rahul, but none of them are power hitters. And if you take the most recent T20, for example, you had Rohit, Rahul, and Kohli, who are three batsmen you can say in the similar mold, who take a little bit of time getting themselves set and then sort of kicking on. And that's one batsman too many in that mold in the top four. So you probably need batsmen who can go gung ho from ball one. Kishan did that in the second T20, which is really refreshing to see. And I think they need to go back to that strategy. There's very little default on the bowling front, actually, apart from a couple of tactical errors, which I believe they would be looking at. I think the bowlers have been, doing the best, and you can't fault them that much. I think it's been the batting which has let down the team.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, as you said, tactically, some of the moves that Kohli took of not bowling Washington Sundar often enough in the power plays. I don't know whether it is about the opposition not having the left-hander at the crease or what, but to what came across, I think he had reasonable success against Jason Roy. So I don't see a reason why you would want to bring in Chehel ahead of Washington Sundar in the power plays. But then maybe these are the things that India would probably be better off ironing out leading into the T20 World Cup.
I completely agree, and I think yeah, some teams nowadays are too hung up on matchups. Maybe that's where T20 is headed. I still feel Sundar can do a very good job in the power play. I think when we saw that when he tossed up the ball, that's when he got hit. But when he was firing them in, neither Butler nor Roy were able to really go after him. And Chahal is someone who doesn't like bowling in the power play, so maybe we can try and avoid that. But again, we've still got two more games to go, so it'll be really interesting to see who wins the toss and whether the trend continues in terms of results. But I certainly think India should go back to the strategy of being more aggressive and sticking to what was a policy espoused at the beginning of the series with the Indian batsmen trying to be aggressive from the get go. Um, right. I think that's enough of the India-England series. Looking at what's been happening in the Caribbean, we've got the series between the West Indies and Sri Lanka. There's the T20 series and there was the ODI series. West Indies won the T20s 2-1. The ODIs 3-0. I think it's been an interesting series in the sense that Sri Lanka are really struggling to find a good batch of players of international quality come in, and I think West Indies are quite comfortable in their home background, and I think they've been challenging teams away as well. And I think in terms of their progress, in terms of improvement that they're showing, I think it's been really good. So yeah, and I think they've got a very strong opening combination in Shea Hope and Evan Lewis at the top of the order in the ODIs. Shea Hope is sort of slowly moving up the ladder in terms of being considered one of the best ODI batsmen.
Yeah, not far off. He's had a very he's almost had a Kohli kind of a ODI career. Just that it is a short career so far, so we don't talk much about. But then he's again stringing in those consistent performances, and alongside Evan Lewis, who is a really explosive batsman. So when he gets going, you generally expect West Indies getting off to a flying start. So if you look at the personnel they have brought in, they almost appear to be actually uh, getting to a core which actually could get to a formidable team of sorts. So Kyron Pollard actually a selection of Kyron Pollard as the white ball team captain a couple of years back. I was not very sure how good that decision was, but I think he is proving his worth, and he is inspiring the people to actually put in the kind of performances that we know he can. And some of the people who are actually raising their hands and grabbing their opportunities, like Fabian Allen, who's a very good addition as an all-rounder. And it was interesting to see Darren Bravo actually score 100 after 5 years, and not just the 100, but I think in one of the other ODIs he had again a telling performance.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
all looking good actually for West Indies, and let's hope that this is not just that they are pitted against a slightly weaker opposition who are not at their best at the moment, and also that West Indies are playing at home. But I think with this core group, if they persist with this, by and large, they should be able to challenge more stronger oppositions anywhere in the world.
yeah. I think with the West Indies, the problem has been that their consistency, right? So you don't know which West Indies would turn up. It's like the Pakistan team. If you wanted to draw parallels from a few years ago. Um, and for Sri Lanka, I think it's really staring down the barrel at the moment. Apart from Gunatilaka, who was consistent all across the series, and a couple of performances from Hasaranga. No one really sort of put their hand up. I think Chandimal scored the odd 50, but that's about it. And heading into the Test series, and again, this is an area where the West Indies have shown some improvement. They won unexpectedly away in Bangladesh with a significantly weaker team. So again, West Indies would be looking for a clean sweep there. And Sri Lanka would be without some key personnel. They won't have Angelo Matthews. They've always had some. I think they've had some injuries in their in some of the preferred first choice bowlers as well. So it'll be interesting to see if Sri Lanka can keep the trend of away teams, surprising the home team in recent series, and that should make for some interesting viewing.
Yeah, absolutely. Having said that, West Indies have a change in their leadership now. I, for one, actually least expected it. So Craig Brathwaite, after his leadership skills that he showed, that expertly led West Indies against Bangladesh, has meant that he has actually taken over the reins from Jason Holder. So Jason Holder was almost like a father figure in West Indies cricket now. He actually held the reins for close to 6 years, because I
Yeah,
remember just before the 2015 World Cup is when he
yeah,
was handed the captaincy.
yeah,
So
yeah,
he's very young still, and actually having captained a team for close to 6 years now, he has actually given way to his deputy.
yeah,
So it's going to be interesting, and we'll see whether it actually springs a spark of sorts in Craig Brathwaite's performance himself. So interesting to see. And having spoken about the games and the team composition, I think the series was actually thoroughly entertaining for a lot of one-off events. The obstructing the field, kind of dividing the cricketing world on how that event must be perceived. That was interesting. In my view, actually, that was very harsh on Ganathilaka. And obviously, before that, the T20 series, T20I series, Pollard actually smacked six sixes in an over after Akila Dhananjaya actually had taken a hat trick in the very previous over. So
yeah,
a bittersweet experience for Dhananjaya.
yeah,
And what this
yeah,
COVID scenario has actually told us is that we are getting to see the games being played at the same venue over and over again. And I think all of this white ball leg at least was being played in Antigua. We obviously saw Sir Vivian Richards Stadium on view in the ODI series, but the T20 series was actually at a lesser known venue, Coolidge. But I think that was quite picturesque. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I think I don't mind it, especially from an environmental perspective, it helps save travel. So I don't mind cricket being played at the same venue for multiple games. Moving on, the series between Afghanistan and Zimbabwe, we had the two test series being concluded 1-1. Zimbabwe won the first test convincingly within 2 days, and the second test, which had Rashid Khan come back into the side, went right to the final session of the final day. So two contrasting test matches, but again, fantastic, fantastic to follow. Unfortunately, we haven't. I don't think we've. It was telecast in the UK, so I tried a few different options. Nothing worked, and so we had to keep track of the score online. And we've had the first T20 happen today, and Afghanistan have won it convincingly. It's always interesting when you have two teams of similar capability sort of match up, because even if it's not the top teams, it still throws up an engrossing battle to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. That two match series was very entertaining, and unfortunately for lack of viewership or lack of telecasting, I don't know. Maybe people actually missed out on some good cricketing action. Two evenly pitted teams. Obviously, the first match, Rashid Khan missed out. I'm not sure how much of a role he would have played, because apparently the groundsman had left a lot of grass on the wicket, which resulted in that 2 day finish to the match. But even in that 2 days, Zimbabwe obviously made the most of it with their tall, fast bowlers. But in the second game, it was an absolute grind of a test match,
Yeah,
with Afghanistan making the most of having won the toss on a docile wicket and piling on the runs. But what impressed me was Zimbabwe actually, in spite of being always behind the eight ball, never gave up. Just when you thought that the steam had run out in while they were following on, They had nearly 200 run partnership for their eighth wicket with the captain, and an unexpected bowler actually stepping up with the bat and
Tiripano,
wicket.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it was very nicely played, and which meant that actually Afghanistan was left with a precarious chase of 100 odd to get in the limited time that they were left with, but they got the job done. But it also meant that Rashid Khan, when he was called in to bowl the second test, ended up bowling 100 overs nearly across the two innings. So it actually
Well,
shows the extent of reliance that Afghanistan has on a bowler of that quality.
he had to make up for not bowling in the first test, I believe. So,
True.
but equally, I think Sean Williams was the standout performer. I think across the series, 200s. The second one coming in a what could have been a match-saving effort if he had found more support at the other end, but still made for engrossing viewing. It was a fabulous series to watch. And I think overall, this also sort of strengthens the case for having two divisions in top flight Test cricket, maybe. Um, it'll certainly make for more interesting matchups and allow for players from the weaker test playing nations, if we can, if we can use that term, to hone their skills, adapt, get more opportunities to play 5 day cricket at an international stage, and hopefully in time become more competitive. I was just reading up on Ireland, for example. They are not going to be playing any test matches this year. They're going to be prioritizing their 1 day or limited overs cricket. And I think there's not going to be even a first class season, if I'm not wrong. So we've got to try and afford as many opportunities as possible for weaker displaying nations to sort of up their standards.
Absolutely. I think it also incentivizes the value added to each game in terms of if you can bring in some form of relegation or elevation in this two-tier system of sorts. I'm sure most of the boards are not going to be happy with that, but it's something that if it makes for engrossing viewing where the two opponents are equally matched, then regardless of who the playing countries are, I think the standard of cricket will hold itself. So that's something that probably ICC could look at.
Absolutely. And moving on to our last series for the day, and that's between the India and South African women, which South Africa have, surprised everyone by winning convincingly, winning the series convincingly 4-1. It was an odd series, right? I think the first couple of games were shared between the teams, and then South Africa just ran away with the rest of the series, and surprisingly chased a lot of, I would say competitive stroke challenging totals in overseas conditions, and they've obviously done really well. It was interesting to read the comments from the Indian coach after the game, where he said the women team have actually not played any cricket apart from they've not played any cricket since the last year's T20 World Cup, and apart from those 4 hurriedly organized games in around the IPL, there's not a lot of cricket that they've had. Whereas the South African team actually came to India after playing Pakistan. I think they played ODIs and T20s, but still there was some match time which they had, which the Indian team didn't have, and I think that sort of affected intensity probably, which again sort of goes on to emphasize that there needs to be women's cricket has suffered during the pandemic in terms of the opportunities to play, and hopefully we can see more cricket being organized.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it kind of goes to show when we talk about the lesser known teams like Ireland and Afghanistan and Zimbabwe suddenly asked to play a series, what kind of challenges they must be facing when they have actually been at a hiatus of sorts for such a prolonged duration. So, but taking nothing away from South Africa, that was a
Yeah,
very well played series by them. And I think, as you said, rightly mentioned, the final 3 ODIs, they actually chased reasonably competitive totals.
yeah,
So a lot of run scoring on both sides. I think from India's side as well, the batters actually did their reputation no harm. In fact, Poonam Raut was probably the second highest scorer after Leslie in the
yeah.
series. So she made her a name for herself. And Mithali Raj actually continues to pile up those runs with those 50s, 60s, and 70s. So those are gritty performances. and Harmanpreet also had some useful contributions here and there. But I think where India lacked was actually the firepower with the bowling. Jhulan Goswami obviously still is the flag bearer of the fast bowling when it comes to the Indian women's cricket. So India's over reliance on spin, and if once that aspect is kind of figured out by the opposition, you almost feel that they have no other plan B of sorts to resort to. So South Africa played well, and I think they thoroughly deserved their victory. And I think in a kind of a gloomy outlook to the South African cricket, considering their men's team performance, I think this performance will do a lot of good to a nation that actually prides themselves on their cricketing performance.
Yeah, and it was even more commendable that they sort of won this in the absence of their regular captain, Dane van Niekerk. So a lot of the senior players sort of put their hands up and showed fantastic performances. I think Shabnim as well, was really good in a couple of games. Marazan Cap was really good. Mignon Dupree, Lizelle Lee was a standout batter in the series. And I think it was really good. It would really again sort of keeps the theme of overseas teams coming in and doing well in unknown conditions, and it's something that we've seen happening all across COVID.
Again, all the 5 games won by the team chasing.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. I think to some extent, I'm not so sure that the Indian batters played all that well, because when I say that, I think they've had one batter probably playing well in a game, but you've not had the collective effort sort of coming in and sort of really propelling it to good scores. So if you look at it, only two out of 5 games they actually scored in close to 250 or in excess of 250. The other games they put in under par totals, which was then easily chased by the South Africans. So yeah, I think we know it's a good batting unit. Sometimes they sort of struggle for power, but in the 50-over game, it does allow them more time to sort of play the longer game and sort of play themselves in. And it's a good set of batters in the team. So hopefully, when we see this, as they play more cricket, I think they'll sort of come back into the zone. So this shouldn't be more than a blip on what's a very decent home record that India have. So here's hoping that there's more cricket coming up for the women, and we can watch it and enjoy it. So that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us and watching this. And hopefully we'll be back soon with another episode where we'll be looking at the events over the next couple of weeks. Until then, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.
See you. Bye.